In the skies above Britain, a UFO appears from nowhere and flies alongside Concorde. It seemed intelligently controlled, but cameras can lie. The flights were filmed with a specially designed periscope camera system, the Astrovision, which uses a complex arrangement of lenses and prisms. We asked Alan Tanner of the original British Airways film team to take a closer look.
Now, this is probably the classic UFO shot that everybody refers to when they talk about UFOs and Concorde. Again, you will find that it looks very similar to other shots that we've got with funny little marks on it that people say, was this a UFO or wasn't it? Look at it closely and you'll find that there's that little spot of light coming there, which could be quite easily mistaken for a UFO. But in fact, it's quite possible that the sun, which was off to the left-hand side, had caught the front element of the Astrovision periscope system and would have caused an internal reflection. And I feel that that is really sums it all up. You will see that as the camera moves, so that little spot moves, and I don't think that's a UFO.
Above the Norfolk Broads, 3 fishermen film a diamond-shaped UFO. Checks were run on aircraft and weather balloons, but the skies were to all intents and purposes completely clear. 3 months earlier, besides the Black Sea, a tourist videoed this. It seemed an extraordinary coincidence. Until we met Simon Nash of Panasonic.
This is a basic iris motor. The principle of the iris motor is to regulate the amount of light entering the camera. The iris motor will open on very dull scenes and poorly illuminated scenes and close down on very high intensity or brightly lit scenes. We actually have no idea what this sort of object is here in the sky. It could be reflection from a plane or some other light source. But as the camera starts to zoom in, you can clearly see here the shape of the actual iris elements within the lens section of the camera. It appears to be caused by a reflection of light entering the front of the camera and bouncing around between the lens elements. And of course, sandwiched between the lens elements is of course the iris motor. And the iris motor takes on this characteristic shape that is often seen when you're looking directly or indirectly in towards the sun. But the image at the beginning of the tape is quite unusual and is something that can't be explained by normal camera technology, if you like.
Over the past 30 years, some 8,000 UFO sightings have been reported to a special department at the British Ministry of Defence. About 5%, or 400 of these, remain unidentified. Nick Pope is the man from the ministry.
The thing to stress is that 95%, I would say, of the reports that we get can be very easily explained. There is probably a hard core of about 5% which appear to defy explanation, and of course we keep an open mind on them. But having said that, it doesn't mean that because something appears to defy explanation that in fact it couldn't be explained the very next day. Recently we've had an airship operating over the UK, and that's been brightly illuminated from the inside. Now when you see it from close up, it's very obviously an airship. When you see it from a long distance away, it just looks like a very bright cigar-shaped object. And of course that has generated an awful lot of UFO reports.
Many reports continue to defy rational explanation. In a valley near Ottawa, the object on the right was apparently witnessed by more than a dozen people. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police said it was in fact a Sikorsky helicopter. But the Canadian Defence Department said there were no helicopters in the area. This curious object filmed above an English cornfield remains a mystery. The tractor driver in the distance said that he saw a small silver disc fly silently over him at speed.
Whatever that is, that's moving outside.
As a TV cameraman was setting up for a weather picture in Wisconsin, an object flashed past the windmill. It's traveling at over 1,000 miles an hour. He checked with a local airbase and with a NORAD defense network, but they had nothing to report. In Oxfordshire, while filming a farming program, a TV crew suddenly noticed this object over the fields.
Well, first of all, we saw what appeared to be a very large vapor trail, much thicker than the normal vapor trails. And when this vapor trail finished, it stopped at a straight line, as opposed to fading out. The object, which was obviously circular and an orange-yellow colour, seemed to stop very slowly and then very quickly out of frame, and it went so quickly, just couldn't follow it. It seemed to be an amazing speed, it really was.
Well, first of all, it was the vapor trail, which seemed to suddenly appear. The line in the sky before the vapor trail actually appeared was also visible, so it looked as though it must have passed overhead without us noticing it at all. But then the vapor trail itself was, may I say, sort of curly, as though the object that was leaving it was in fact spinning. Then, looking at the object itself, you could see with the naked eye that it was in fact spinning, and orange and round.
Over 3,500 UFO reports worldwide have come from civilian and military pilots, people like Colonel Fletcher Prouty, who commanded an air squadron based in Tokyo in the 1950s. He was one of the 5 founders of the massive NORAD defense network.
My aircraft were in the sky over half the world, regularly, all the time. And one day I got a top secret memorandum delivered from the White House, from the headquarters of the Air Force. And it ordered me to tell my crews that if ever they saw an object that was unidentified, they were to report it to me. I was to set them down and take their depositions, sworn statements, and then mail them to a certain office in the Pentagon. And one day, one of my crews on a flight from Honolulu to Tokyo saw something that they had to report. And they walked in my office that morning, and the captain of the crew was an old acquaintance of mine. He said, "Colonel, I'm really a little embarrassed today." He said, "because we're going to get involved in a lot of paperwork." He said, "We saw an unidentified object flying beside our aircraft for over an hour last night between Midway and Tokyo. We had 60 passengers aboard. There's no way we can say that it wasn't seen and wasn't there." So I had 12 men in the crew. I had to set aside 12 rooms with 12 interrogators. We had them write their stories down, what they saw. I packaged that all up and sent it to the headquarters Air Force. Never heard another word from it.